What's up, everyone? I hope you are doing well today in light of everything that's going on in the world. But we are here for episode 156 of the MMA Ratings Podcast. This is Raphael Garcia here with Schwan Humes. And first and foremost, I hope everyone's safe. I hope everyone is able to enjoy what they can during these hard times, especially if you're in cities where I am, where you're basically like stuck in because everything is closed. But Shawan, man, how are you doing, sir? Let everybody know how you're doing.
Not too bad. It's a little bit different in Texas, I guess, because a lot of stuff is still open. We just had my kids just got out of school for about 3 weeks now. They're gonna have 3 weeks off, but other than that, I'm still going to work. My job still opens up and expects us to be there, so it's kind
What
of
do you do?
strange. I'm working at an office supply company now. I used to work at a rock quarry.
And they're still open, really?
Yeah, they're still placing orders, taking orders. I just made filled 5 orders today, and I just been calling people. Trying to get them to take care of accounts that are delinquent. So I guess people are still showing up all over Texas.
Are bars and restaurants closed yet?
They got the restaurants mostly for the drive-through, but they're not completely open, but they're still serving. They're just doing drive-through.
Yeah, the clubs and nightclubs here are closed. Um, the bars here are closed. Gyms are closed here. So yeah, it's pretty much shutting down.
Yeah, I guess Texas is a little bit behind because they just now started. They had a rec center, now that's officially closed. They had another gym that was closed. I didn't even, it just started happening. And I train like kids in basketball, so everything's kind of hit a grinding halt in the past couple of days. But as far as work and everything, I'm still going. Kids are off for the next 2.5 weeks, but I'm still checking into work every day, get up, get dressed, head out there, and 8 or 9 hours there, and then come back home.
True, I definitely understand that. But we have a little bit to talk about from the world of mixed martial arts. We're going to talk about UFC Brasilia from this past Saturday. We're also going to talk about the impact that coronavirus is having on the mixed martial arts community and also get some listener questions in. We have, I think, two questions in that we're going to cover today. So before we do that, let's talk first and foremost about the where you can find our show. As always, you can go over to MMAratings.net to rank our fights and let us know how excited you are about the upcoming fights. Right now, not that much to be excited about, but you can still go over to MMAratings.net and read a lot of the content that's there. You can check out past episodes of this podcast as well. And you can find us on Instagram and Twitter at MMA Ratings Net on both platforms. You can catch our podcast on various channels such as Anchor, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple iTunes. And you can also catch us on YouTube by searching for MMA Ratings. Please be sure to like and share our content and let us know what you think. You can add comments there. And you can also send us questions over on Twitter to either myself, Schwan, or the MMA Ratings Net Twitter handle. So, Schwan, let's go ahead and jump into results from Saturday, where in the main event, we saw Charles Oliveira get a submission win over Kevin Lee in the third round. And this is a fight that a lot of people were expecting Kevin Lee to get the win. And we know that Charles Oliveira is great. We know he's good. I mean, he's sneaky good. He has a lot of records that people don't really recognize, and that he's just been doing his thing, collecting scalps left and right. And this fight was pretty interesting, but he was able to get the finish via guillotine choke in the third round. He caught Kevin Lee stepping in for a single leg. And as you teach everyone in basic jiu-jitsu, basic wrestling, basic MMA, you don't want to get caught with your head to the outside. And that's exactly what happened because he was able to finish the guillotine from there, getting the tap, I think, 48 seconds into the third round. So what did you think of both men in this outing? Let's start there.
It I think they pretty much showed me what I expected to see from them. The biggest thing that shocked me was, I guess, I really felt that Kevin was going to come in a little bit more disciplined as far as his offense and his defense on the feet, and it seemed like he just started getting it back into the habit of being kind of desperate and kind of trying to force an approach that's not really effective for him. The biggest issue I've had with Kevin Lee is he fights in the wrong manner. It's like he thinks he's an elite athlete, like an A+ athlete, and he's really more like a B-. And he fights like he has these huge athletic and physical advantages over guys, and he just doesn't. Like, he's a good athlete, but he's not a guy who can just fight dumb or fight sloppy or throw wide or take bad shots because he's such a dynamic force. There's lots of fighters who could get away with what he does because they're good enough athletes, they're physical enough, strong enough, they're physically durable enough. And he's none of those things, but he fights in a reckless manner like he is. And in his last fight, I saw some growth, saw some maturity, saw some focus, but it was a short fight. So I kind of assumed that he would take the next step because he seems like a smart guy. But in this fight, it seemed like he regressed a little bit. Once Oliveira started pushing back and challenging him in certain positions and putting hands on him, it seemed like he went back to overreacting to everything defensively and over pursuing offensively. And ultimately, against a guy like Charles Oliveira, you can't chase takedowns, you can't chase takedowns, you can't even really chase strikes because he's an opportunistic grappler. I don't know how good he is from top to bottom as far as his structure, A to Z, but as far as finding an opening because somebody gets too sloppy or over aggressive, he might as well be the elite of the elite in MMA. If you over pursue against him or you leave an opening, he's going to take it and get a submission, and that's essentially what he did against Kevin Lee. Kevin Lee just got desperate, trying to force a takedown, and ultimately paid for it. Kevin Lee knows better than that. He's a better grappler than that, but it seemed like he was under duress. He panicked, and he took a bad shot, and he was punished for it.
So one question I have is, do you think the tide of the fight was changing? Looking at the fight, I believe Oliveira won the first round. He was much more aggressive, even though he was on his back with the various heel hook entries he was going with, the submission entries he was going for. Round two, I thought Kevin Lee had kind of took over, and I thought from that forward we was going to see much more of him kind of like taking control and being able to outpace Oliveira's output. I saw something that Oliveira may have injured his shoulder in the fight as well. But looking at where we were before the fight ended, did you think the tide was beginning to change in Lee's favor?
Well, the thing about it is when I saw Lee starting to take over, I felt like that wasn't a good look for him because Lee tends to get lazy or lackadaisical when he really starts feeling sure of himself. He did it against, Ali Quinta in his first fight. He had some brief moments where he was kind of dominating. He got in the comfort zone, and then when the fight turned, it's like he checked out of it. When he fought Edson Barboza, he was completely dominating that fight, beating Edson from pillar to post, and then Edson hits him with a spinning kick, and he's doing the stanky leg, stumbling around, falling all over the cage. It's like he doesn't know how to maintain control once he gets it, unless he's far superior to you athletically or technically. If it's a fight where a guy has enough durability to navigate the rough waters or enough skill, then he starts to kind of fall apart. He did the same thing with Raphael dos Anjos. He was trying to physically dominate him, and then he kind of just wore down, and dos Anjos turned the tide around on him. The one fight he won was really not really a long enough fight for him to be put in adverse situations or put him in a situation where he had a chance to get lackadaisical. You like to see Kevin Lee assert himself. You like to see him use his physicality and his strength, but he doesn't seem to have any real poise for the entirety of a fight. How many fights have we seen from Kevin Lee where he starts out really strong, he's getting takedowns, he's controlling a guy, and then a fight that he's completely dominating either becomes competitive or ends up being a loss for him? Tony Ferguson, Raphael dos Anjos, Oliveira, Ali Quinta. It's like there's numerous examples of him coming out seemingly taking control of a fight, and then out of nowhere getting submitted or just getting outworked and out hustled and beaten. It's like a trend for him at this point. So when he started taking over, it didn't really make me feel any sort of way positively, because I know that when he gets cocky, when he gets comfortable, he tends to get cocky, he tends to get lackadaisical, and then he tends to lose against guys who've got enough athleticism to kind of counter his physical advantages that he usually has.
I actually kind of have a question, that listener question that we're going to ask later on in reference to that. But last thing I want to touch on when it comes to this fight, what do you think is next for both men? Oliveira, I believe, should leap into the top 10 with this victory. Let me check the UFC rankings to see if they've been updated in this hectic week we've been in. Let me check real quick. So lightweight, he is now sitting at number 8, so he jumped up 5 positions while Kevin Lee dropped 2 and is sitting at number 10. What do you think is next for him? Should he face someone like a Paul Felder, even though Renato Moicano called him out, Donald Cerrone, but Donald Cerrone's fighting at 170 now. There's not much left for him above those two names because Dan Hooker, Justin Gaethje, Conor McGregor, Dustin Poirier, and Tony Ferguson are already kind of busy at this point in time. So what would you do next with both Charles Oliveira and Kevin Lee?
Well, Charles Oliveira, I probably Paul Felder might be a good. Wait, did he already fight Paul Felder? I want to say he's already fought Paul Felder.
He did. He was actually beating the shit out. He was beating the hell out of Paul Felder. Took his back and was about to look like he had some good submission attempts in, but then ran out of gas and got stopped the next round. So you're right. He did fight Paul already.
There's not a lot of matchups for him right now, just because all the big name guys are out. I mean, if I was him, I'd try to get the Conor McGregor fight. The thing about Oliveira is with this streak is Oliveira's shown improvement. His offense is a little bit more crisp. His wrestling's a little bit more crisp. His grappling is still opportunistic to me, but it doesn't seem like he explodes and wastes all his energy in one or two attempts to where the point where he's gassed and he can't finish later on, where he gasses and he gets beaten up or stopped. So he's shown much more seasoning. He's shown much more maturity. He's kind of going through steps like A, B, C, D, and E instead of going from A to E trying to finish. And his striking's looking a little bit cleaner. But the thing that concerns me is that he's just not a very durable fighter. Against the best of the best guys, the elite talents, the elite skill guys, he's routinely gotten blown out. I mean, he was beating up Paul Felder, but Paul Felder came back and stopped him. Anthony Pettis, he was competitive with Anthony Pettis, but then eventually his body failed him. Max Holloway, his body failed him. He got stopped. Donald Cerrone got stopped. Just as he's faced the better guys, he tends to kind of either physically get stopped or mentally check out and just get outworked. And I think he's appealing for a guy like Conor McGregor or maybe even a Justin Gaethje for the reason that he's won enough fights in a row where people are starting to consider him a real-life contender. But the fact of the matter is, in all the fights he's won, he hasn't faced really a better athlete, and he hasn't faced anybody who's capable of putting his lights out with one shot. Kevin Lee's not that kind of striker. Justin Gaethje and Conor McGregor are. And as good as he is with his submissions, the fact of the matter is he's still not one of the best wrestlers. He's still not great at getting guys down, and he still tends to hunt submissions kind of haphazardly a little bit. He's starting to use entries into submissions a little bit smoother now, but before he would just jump into them and try to finish. So if you're a Conor McGregor, you're Justin Gaethje, you have this guy on a 5, 6, 7 win streak, whatever it is, and he's looking good, but the fact of the matter is he's still not a high-end wrestler, and he's still not very durable. I mean, Kevin Lee had him in spots where he was touching him up and backing him off. Anthony Pettis basically stopped this guy. You're telling me Conor McGregor couldn't land that left hand? Conor McGregor couldn't defend a couple takedowns, put him on his back, beat him up a little bit, let him get back to his feet and knock him out? I can see that happening. Justin Gaethje, as soon as Justin puts about a 3 to 5 shots on him, fight's over. So he's got an appealing enough resume recently to justify a big name, and he's just vulnerable enough where it's a favorable matchup, where a guy could fight him, and even though it's a favorable matchup, people are going to ignore that because of his current win streak. So I would, if I was him, I'd try to see if I could get Conor. I'd try to see if I could get Justin. Those are the only two guys I'm really trying to get because those are the guys who are going to get the most media attention and get you the biggest payday. With or without the contract, those are the guys who are going to draw enough eyes that are going to get you the biggest payday. Outside of that, I'm not fighting anybody. There's just no point in it. Everybody else he'd be fighting right now is the second or third tier lightweight. What does that do for him? He's already beaten up all the second and third tier lightweight. What's he going to do, fight Ally Quinta? Nah, I'll just wait. There's no point in doing rematches. He might as well just wait. As far as Kevin Lee, I agree with what he said. He needs to take a long period of time off. I don't think that the camp is bad for him. What I think is he has the same problem that every other fighter has in mixed martial arts. They lose a couple fights, and instead they learn a couple tricks, and then they try to jump right back in there. And you can't jump right back in there. You need to take, depending on the loss or the series of losses, you need to take 6 to 8 months minimum, probably more like a year and a half, to really expand your skill set, work on whatever deficiencies you have, so that when you get in these fights, when you're put into a bad situation, you still follow the game plan. You still have answers. You still look for certain counters. You look for specific things to do instead of falling back to what you always do. And what Kevin Lee did in this fight, he said it himself. My corner was giving me good instruction. I just didn't listen, which means he hadn't trained it enough for it to be second nature. That's happened to him, happened to people like Claudia Gadelha, happened to Anthony Pettis. They're in such a rush to get that ranking back that they rush back out there, and one loss turns into 2, turns into 3, turns into 4. Same thing's happened to Kevin Lee. He needs to take time off, really go back to the drawing board and address the mental and strategical holes he has in his game. You can't just fix that in 3 months. You can't just fix it in 4 months. You can't cover it up with a knockout. You have to really address the problem. So I'm saying he takes 6 to 8 months off minimum. I'd prefer like a year and a half, and then come back and see where he's at. But right now, he just needs to take a break. He doesn't even need to be fighting, in my estimation.
What are your thoughts about Kevin Lee not being in the right weight class? How greatly would a 165-pound class benefit him, seeing how he fares at 155 and struggling to make that weight?
It would benefit him to a degree, but the thing is, fighters old, and I'm not a fighter, so you know this. And as a person who's competed, I don't want to disrespect you. Somebody actually pointed out to me, they're like, Raphael's competed. Doesn't he find it offensive when you say these things about fighters? And I'm like, I don't think so. I'm just speaking from a person who's worked with them, my perspective. But if I've ever offended you, I apologize. I have to be cognizant of that. But fighters always assume my issue is weight. My issue is weight. Kevin Lee didn't lose his fight because of weight. He lost it because he overpursued a takedown, because he got panicked when he was put under duress. When he was having to work and there was a threat, he overreacted. He always does. He's done it routinely. He's not defensively sound throughout a 5-round or 3-round fight. He always gives you opportunities, not because he's a dumb fighter, but because he gets lackadaisical and he overpursues. He gets sloppy. That's a mental issue. That's not a weight issue. That's a mental issue. Getting submitted isn't a weight issue. That's a lack of skill. That's putting yourself in a position against this guy you can't afford to put yourself in that kind of position where. Against Ally Quinta, the weight was an issue. The fact is he hadn't addressed his offense, he hadn't addressed his striking defense, and his wrestling's never been good enough to just dominate anybody with any sort of class as a wrestler. These are technical and strategical issues that he has not addressed over the length of his career. And if you follow my criticism, Kevin Lee, it's been the same stuff. I've said the same thing about him for the past 2 to 3 years because he hasn't gotten any better. So the weight would help. He wouldn't miss weight, which would save him money, and he'd look like a professional. Maybe he'd be a little bit more fresher. But what's the point of having better energy if you still can't really take punches that well? Because at 55, he still kind of flinches from punches, and at 70, he gets backed all the way up at punches. So what's really the weight's not gonna help that. The weight's not gonna help poor decision making. It's not gonna help lackluster striking. It's not gonna help you leaning on athleticism you don't have. It doesn't address any of those problems. But fighters always assume if I can fight it this way or fight this way, it's going to fix my problem. No, your problem is a skill problem, a skill and a strategy problem. You need to address those first. Now, if he was just losing because he was gassing, that'd be different. If he was losing just because he was getting physically bullied, that'd be different. He's losing because he's not good enough. And he's losing because he fights a very sloppy, very overly aggressive fight style. That's why he's losing. It's got nothing to do with weight.
Okay, man, that's some excellent breakdown there and your thoughts on what the issues are in Kevin Lee's game. Let's talk about that co-main event where Gilbert Burns got a quick win over Damian Maia, and he finished him in the first round via TKO due to strikes. First and foremost, did you agree with the stoppage?
Yeah. I mean, I think you should just play safe with a guy like Damian Maia at his age, with his mileage, and the fact he's never been super durable against an explosive big puncher early. You're not taking any chances. It'd be different if it was a regular MMA fighter or an okay wrestler, an okay grappler, because you're thinking Damian might have the chance to pull a submission out. Gilbert Burns is good enough grappler, at least comparable, if not better than Maia. He's not going to get caught in a submission. Not when Maia's rocked and he's about to put coffin nails into him. The likelihood of that happening in that matchup isn't very high. It's most likely Damian's going to take a beating and possibly get seriously hurt.
Okay, I definitely agreed with it as well too. Maia wasn't out when he hit the ground, but Burns was definitely in a position to put the hurt on him. And I like the idea that Burns didn't want to jump on him and pound him out of there out of respect, because a lot of people have a lot of respect for Damian Maia, and I appreciate that.
I was impressed that he fought very smart. Like, you thought he might get in that ego and try to challenge him in the grappling, and he just like, I have a clear advantage here. I'm not even playing this game. I'm just gonna light him up on the feet in that discussion right there. And that was the best way he could have handled it.
Well, I think he did. I think he did try to challenge. I don't think he did. He did try to challenge Maia on the ground, and Maia took his back, like right out the gate. And he took his back and he mounted him. But Burns is knowledgeable enough to get out from those positions. Like, as I said, Maya is an ADCC gold medalist. Burns is an ADCC bronze medalist. These two guys are not scrubs on the mat. I'm not saying that they're comparable. I think Maya will win a straight up grappling match. Maya would. I will. Since Burns is more active in that space, I think he plays the rules a little bit better. But that's neither a conversation here nor there.
I just felt like he wasn't like Gunnar Nelson, where Gunnar Nelson almost refused to strike with him. He just kept searching for the grappling, and it's like, why are you doing this? This guy cannot hang on the feet. You have an athletic advantage, a power advantage, and a skill advantage. How are you just constantly chasing grappling exchanges against a guy his caliber? Even if you're better than him, why are you basically forcing the fight into an area where he can compete with you when you know he can't compete with you anywhere else?
I mean, Nelson was out-grappled by both of them. And Burns was out-grappled in this situation here too as well. He was able to get out from bottom, which was imperative. But as soon as he got out from bottom, you saw he got right back to the feet, and he was trying to keep it there. So I agree with your sentiment, but I do think Maya did well. I think both men did well in this situation here. What are your thoughts about what's next for Burns? He tried to slide into that potential fight with Tyron Woodley, but we saw that fall apart. What do you think is next for him? Because he's sitting at number 6 in the welterweight division, and we have ahead of him, we have Stephen Thompson and Leon Edwards. Both of those guys look like interesting fights, especially since Edwards has been pushed out of UFC London. Well, and if they don't rebook that fight with Tyron Woodley, they'll need an opponent for him. And you also have Stephen Thompson as well. Above that, you have Jorge Masvidal, Kobe Covington, and Tyron Woodley. What are your thoughts about that makeup there?
Like if I'm Burns, I'm waiting for the biggest fight I can get. There's gonna be a lot of guys, who will want somebody to come in last second or make this card. And I think at this point he's got to start making business decisions. He's coming off a big win and a stoppage win over Maya, and Maya hasn't been stopped in quite a while. Last time I remember, I don't think he's been stopped since Roy McDonald finished him. But it's a big win. It was on a big stage, and I just think if I'm Burns, I'm making business decisions from here on out. If they give me a Cowboy Cerrone, I might take that because that's a big fight. They give me a Conor McGregor, I'll take that as a big fight. They give me a Tyron Woodley, I'll take that because that's a big fight. But outside of that, I'm just sitting and waiting to see how things unfold, because he's at a point where he's never had this much heat. He's never been in this position, and one loss is going to send him tumbling down. He's not a named guy. He's not a particularly popular guy. He needs to be very careful in what his next decision is regarding who he fights and where he fights them at.
What were your thoughts about the two proposed retirement fights for Maya, Diego Sanchez and Donald Cerrone? I think Donald Cerrone is the best bet out of the two. But what were some of your thoughts about that there?
Well, how can I put it? I would think Donald Cerrone would be an interesting fight. I almost want to see the Diego fight, just because Diego's not. It's gonna be the grappling match everybody wants. Diego isn't as high a level grappler as Maya, but he's very well conditioned. He's an excellent scrambler, and he's very creative when it comes to escapes or counters. So I feel like he'd be able to make an interesting fight, and he would engage Maya exclusively grappling, which is the best thing for both guys. Diego really shouldn't be taking any punishment on the feet if he can avoid it. I'd rather not see Damian Maya take any punishment on the feet if he can avoid it, and it would be a good high-paced action fight. So I'd probably like to see that Diego fight a little bit more against Cowboy Cerrone. Even though Cowboy tends to freeze up against a certain level of guy, I don't know that Maya is the style or the guy who's going to make him freeze up. I think he actually beats Maya. Diego, I feel, is a win for Maya, and it's him going out in a highly competitive grappling fight. Diego's going to try to strike with him, but the minute Maya shoots on him or tries to clinch up, Diego's going to go all in on grappling with him. And that's really what everybody wants to see when it comes to Maya. They want to see him grapple with somebody who's willing to engage, capable of at least escaping a few spots and pushing him a little bit, and then see Maya show the separation between him and MMA fighters. So I think that would be the fight I'd want to see.
Good thoughts there, sir. Let's talk about some other action from the card, where we saw Renato Moicano get a submission win over Hadzovic. Moicano called out Felder as well, and he looked good at 155 in this fight here. But do you think he's someone to watch at lightweight, or is he going to be outsized eventually at this in this division?
Well, I think Moicano, he's been often told that he's this great defensive fighter. He's not. What really separates him is he's got a natural physicality and he's got a broad set of skills as far as his offense. I won't say they're high level necessarily high level technically, but he's got a good depth of skill and he's got a nice wide skill range. I don't know that he's a super physical fighter, so I don't know that he'll necessarily get outsized, but I do know that his defense isn't top notch. And against guys, there's so many guys like with division, even guys who aren't elite, who are capable of dynamic and explosive offense. And I feel that that's going to be the biggest factor more than anything else. That is not even the physicality, just the fact that these guys, he's probably a little bit better athlete than some of them, but defensively, he's kind of predictable. He's kind of got one layer of defense, and once guys get to that layer, I feel that he just won't be able to stand up to what they have to offer. And I don't think that he hits hard enough, nor is he physically strong enough to really keep guys off him or to control guys for the better part of rounds to avoid punishment. So I feel like it's his lack of durability and his inconsistent defense, which is really going to be the problem at lightweight more so than anything else as regards to size or physicality.
Who would like to see him face next if it's not Felder?
It's not Felder. I mean, Felder's a really good fight for him. If it's not Felder at 55, let me think. I wouldn't mind seeing him face somebody like an Iaquinta. Give him a couple, yeah, more than some. I mean, I know that's not going to probably, it's not most likely not going to happen, but somebody like Iaquinta would be a good fight for him to let him kind of get his sea legs underneath him, face a guy who's durable, who's got some physicality, and who's shown that he's got enough experience to survive against elite guys, even if he can't necessarily win against elite guys.
Let's see. I wanted to talk about one other piece of this fight as well too, or this two other bouts I wanted to talk about: Nikita Krylov and Johnny Walker. The main thing I wanted to talk about here is Walker being exposed, or is Krylov continuing to excel? And the reason why I asked that is because Walker did not look good on the ground at all. What are your thoughts about this? Is he really being exposed out here, or is he someone that is at a point where he needs to change something up before he can grow?
I don't know that he's being exposed. He was never that good a fighter. He's a big, strong, athletic guy, and anytime it's like any sport: football, basketball, baseball, boxing, kickboxing, even jujitsu for a certain degree. I know everybody says in jujitsu and submissions it's not about athleticism, but if you have a guy who's a white belt, who's 10 levels higher than you as far as an athlete, but he's a let's say solid blue belt. Even if you're way better than him technically, that size, that explosiveness, that physical strength is going to allow him to survive a lot longer than a guy of his skill set because he's got the physical attributes to get out of certain spots. And he's got the physical attributes to force you into spots, even if he doesn't have the technical skills. It's the same thing for boxing, same thing in basketball. That's all Johnny Walker is. I haven't seen him put together structured combinations. I haven't seen him put together really well set up takedowns or well set up escapes or well set up counters. It's all explosiveness, length, and the creativity that comes from being a superior athlete. It's not a lot of skill in there. So I didn't think he was that good in the first place, and this is just exposing that he really is a fairly one-dimensional athlete. I know that he's working with Zahabi, if I recall correctly, but once again, like Kevin Lee, that takes time. The only difference between Kevin Lee and Walker is in Walker's weight class, he's considered an elite athlete. But the fact of the matter is he doesn't have the skill set, nor does he have the maturity necessary to handle being put in bad spots. When he gets put in bad spots, he exerts too much energy. When a guy is pressing him or putting pressure on him, he exerts too much energy trying to get away. He exerts too much energy throwing strikes to create space instead of being calm and poised and sliding across the ring, stepping out of angles, or feigning to create space. He throws huge amounts of offense to create the space instead of using his footwork. He doesn't know how to close distance properly, so he explodes into it. Every time you have an explosion, there's a big drop in activity. There's a big drop in defensive awareness. There's a big drop in the dynamic aspect of his offense, which makes him vulnerable. And he doesn't have the skill set necessary to navigate it. When he makes a big move and gets taken out, he doesn't know how to work his way back up. He essentially tries to explode his way out of everything, which works to a degree until you face a guy with enough athleticism or enough size to kind of stymie that, which means you waste all your energy trying to get to a better spot. And even when you get to that better spot, it's either late in the round or you can't do any damage because you're so tired. He has no natural feel for fighting, and he has no developed or refined mental acuity for fighting. So he makes a lot of mistakes, and he doesn't have the poise and maturity to ride out the mistakes he makes calmly. It's all explode, explode, get out, get away, get away, get away. Let me get the takedown. Let me land this shot. There's no build up. There's no setup, and he hasn't been trained properly for a period of time long enough for him to make these things second nature. So he was never that good, and he's in this right now. He's in that transition period where he's going from wild fighting athlete to actual trying to make an attempt to be a fighter, which means he's going to have a bumpy road ahead of him. He could still win some because he's so dynamic and he's fighting a light heavyweight, which is weak, but he's going to take some damage and he's going to have some losses because he's trying to find the balance between using his athleticism to maximize the skills and using it as a crutch. Right now, it's still a crutch, and he's used it for the majority of his career, and it's still kicking him in the ass as a result. He just needs more time, and he needs more reps, and he needs to find guys who are comparable athletes, so he just can't athlete his way out of things. He actually has to develop skill and feel for them.
All right there. And the last one I wanted to talk about from Saturday is Brandon Moreno and Jussier Formiga. Is this a coming out moment for Moreno? He defeated one of the top contenders for the flyweight title, and should he be the man that steps up next if they do the rematch between Figueroa and Benavidez?
It was a come out. The biggest thing with Moreno is he's also a guy who fought in spots. And he either would strike or wrestle. He had a hard time putting things together. He had a hard time, whether it's going from striking to grappling to wrestling. He had a hard time going offense to defense. He just had a hard time maintaining any sort of control. He would have these big moments of offense, and once he got past that, he would essentially get outworked, beat up, or broken down over the length of a fight. An example of that would be his fight with Sergio Pettis. Put him in some really bad spots early. Rest of the fight was just him getting beat up on the feet and neutralized in every wrestling, grappling, or striking attempt he made. I saw some growth in him. He fought with some sort of aggression, but controlled aggression, and he seemed a little bit more sharper, more aware defensively. I won't say he was a whole lot better defensively, but more aware defensively, and he was attacking Jussier in spots where he wasn't strong in. He didn't run into clinches. He didn't allow Jussier to put him up against the fence continuously and force him into spots where he'd have to burn a lot of energy trying to get back to the positions he wanted to. He fought responsibly, and he essentially avoided those spots, and he picked his spots to be offensive. And I don't think Formiga was expecting that. I think Formiga was expecting the wild man, a guy who's easy to hit, a guy who's going to fall into clinches, a guy who's going to stand in front of him a little bit, and he didn't get that. And I think it threw him off, and I think it showed a breakthrough for Brandon Moreno. And if he ends up fighting someone like Joseph Benavidez, that's an even money fight, given his explosiveness, how hard he hits, and how athletic he is. So I think he set himself up for a potential title fight after this rematch they're having, if they're in fact having that rematch whenever they have it.
How would you take him against both of those fighters?
Oh, man. I'm always going to favor Benavidez because I'm such a fan of his skill set. I'm such a fan of his discipline and the variety of skills he has and his ability to work through bad spots. Unless you outright finish him, Benavidez has shown an ability to adjust, whether it's pushing a pace, slowing down the pace, getting into grappling exchanges, or just forcing wrestling exchanges to get to his end goal, which is to wear you down, let his power and his timing take over the fight. So I'm always going to pick Benavidez. The thing is, Benavidez is getting easier to hit. His defense has never been great, and I don't think he takes shots like he used to. So Moreno's a very light dog against him because he doesn't have the chin he used to have. He still makes similar mistakes in striking exchanges, but he no longer has the physical ability to recover or just to take the strikes straight up. So I would pick Benavidez, but with a real, like, maybe 49-51%, 51% Joe, 49% Moreno. Against I can't even remember his opponent's name. That guy, I just don't have very much opinion of that guy. Figueroa, he's a big, strong guy. He can take punishment. He doesn't get scared off. But if Moreno can apply steady pressure and just keep from getting wild and burning himself out, I don't see how he doesn't get past Figueroa. I know he's strong. I know he's physically durable, which allows him to maintain his composure because he's not really getting hurt. And guys can't handle his pressure and his physicality, but I believe Moreno can. It's just a matter of will Moreno fight a clean, 5 rounds. If he fights a clean 5 rounds, if he fights with poise, and he applies the power he has to the right spots, aka the body and the legs, I really believe that he beats Figueroa pretty decisively. I don't think Figueroa has the skill set to really test him. He has the physical durability and the pressure, but he didn't have the skill set. His offensive footwork is terrible. His defense is awful, and his striking is so at best. The toughest matchup for him is going to be Joseph Benavidez because the depth of skill, the width of skill, and the championship level experience. That's going to be the toughest fight for him.